And now, in studio, bringing his Midwest values from the Show Me State to the land of San Diego. He's a triple threat, licensed as an attorney, mortgage broker, and a top producing realtor who's crushing the competition. Here to deliver you what's happening in the trenches of the market. Your host, Michael Gaddis.
Welcome to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer. I am your host, Michael Gaddis of michaelgaddis.com and frontierloangroup.com. I am here every Monday night at 7 p.m. to talk about anything and everything related to real estate. And as you know, some things not related to real estate. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that I have two reverse mortgage workshops coming up in El Cajon. I have one coming up February 21st and another one at February 28th. Both of them are at Marietta's Restaurant at 1746 East Main Street in El Cajon. That's Thursday, February 21st, and then again on February 28th. Both of them are at Marietta's Restaurant at 1746 East Main Street in El Cajon. Well, I'd like to start today with a very special guest. I have a very, very special guest. He is Paul Downey, the President and CEO of Serving Seniors. So, Paul, I'd like to thank you for coming on the show today.
Great to be with you, Michael.
Well, tell us, what is Serving Seniors?
Well, Serving Seniors we're a nonprofit organization, so we've been around for 47 years in this community, and we focus on helping very low-income seniors. In fact, most of our seniors earn less than $1,000 a month through their Social Security and are struggling to get by on a daily basis. And really, poverty is kind of the overarching challenge that most of them are facing.
Well, you know, you say that, and someone out there might be thinking, well, how can someone survive on that? And I'll tell you something. I run into it myself all the time. I run into it myself where people, own a home, have a lot of equity in their home, but they're living in a home like on $800 a month or $1,000 a month Social Security, and that's it.
Yeah, well, that's what we see. And most of the people we work with are living in the single-room occupancy hotels downtown. So it's a single room, smaller than the studio we're in now. It's about less than 100 square feet, usually a shared bathroom somewhere down the hall. And rents in downtown San Diego are going for about $700 a month for that space. And then the median income is about $850 a month. So they're living on $150 to $200 a month after they've paid rent for an SRO, which I guarantee neither you nor I would want to sleep or even be inside them. They're not very nice places. And so they're struggling with everything else around them in order to just survive.
You know, as everyone knows, I've had a lot of senior centers and community centers on recently, and one of the things I've learned is that our senior community has become the forgotten community. People don't think of them as much. They think of the children, they think of the homeless, they think of a lot of different things, but the one demographic they forget about is our seniors, and seniors need help.
Well, they do, and it's kind of crazy not to think about it. When you look at the demographics, I mean, in this country, we're an aging society. By 2030, we're going to double the number of people over the age of 60 in this country, and it'll be almost a quarter of the population will be over the age of 60. It's baby boomers, of course, people both born after World War II, and then about a quarter of the population will be 18 and under. So when you look at some of the challenges we have in this country, by 2030, 50% of the population in the middle will essentially be largely supporting 50% of the population on one end or the other. So from a policy perspective, it is critically important that we start to focus on what are we going to do to make sure that we are properly prepared for essentially this tsunami of older adults that the United States is going to have.
So what are some of the things that Serving Seniors does to help these seniors?
Well, the most important thing we do are meals. We do about 600,000 meals annually. We have 10 senior centers around the county, from downtown through out to as far east as Lemon Grove, Spring Valley, La Mesa, far south as San Ysidro. And we deliver to about 500 homebound on a daily basis. So it's a lot of meals. A couple thousand a day are going out of of our kitchen. And those meals are designed to keep people healthy and independent. And so if we do our job right, we want to delay or defer the need for some sort of long-term care. So meals are the core, but I also have nurses, social workers, activities that are built around to make sure that it provides that safety net so that people don't fall through the cracks.
Well, I got a statistic from your office that says that, did you know that 2 in 5 San Diego seniors have to choose between rent and food?
Yeah, absolutely true. And this comes actually from UCLA, that did a study that looked at economic security, and it shows that 41% of seniors in San Diego County do not have enough money to pay for their rent, for their transportation, their health care, or their food. And that is a staggering number when you think about it. So 2 in 5 are struggling to figure out which one of those things are they going to pay for. And logically, it tells us that you need to have all of those if you're going to remain healthy and you're going to remain independent. Because from the independence is really important, because the cost of long-term care can be $5,000–6,000 a month, and that Medicare doesn't cover that. So unless you have long-term care insurance, that's going to come out of your life savings, and many people, it completely bankrupts them. So there's an economic incentive to keeping people independent. And of course, from a human perspective, nobody aspires to live in a nursing home.
Well, it's interesting because, doing what I do and as reverse mortgages, and I give speeches and seminars and workshops throughout Southern California, not just San Diego. So I'm exposed to a lot, and a lot of these events that I go to are not necessarily reverse mortgage based, they're just senior based. So I'm exposed to a lot of different seniors throughout Southern California. And I run across seniors exactly like what you're saying. When I talk, they stop by my booth, they'll chat me up a little bit, and I'll just start talking to them, and they're living in conditions that the rest of us would consider like unacceptable.
Oh yeah, we see that every single day. Some of the single room occupancy hotels, they are filled with all sorts of unpleasant critters. Usually the neighbors are not necessarily the best, and they're struggling. But even seniors who maybe have an apartment or even have the house like you described, they just don't have that income. They are house rich but cash poor, and trying to get by on a daily basis. And a lot of them have a lot of pride. So going and asking for help is something that doesn't come naturally to this generation, and sometimes they get themselves into a lot of trouble before finally something dramatic happens and they need some sort of intervention from an agency like Serving Seniors.
Well, you're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer. I am your host, Michael Gaddis at michaelgaddis.com and frontierloangroup.com. And we are speaking to Paul Downey, the president and CEO of Serving Seniors, and their website is servingseniors.org. And I was going to tell you that what you just said, it's exactly right. I have a client right now in Palm Springs, and he has, I think his Social Security is $940 a month. His house is paid off, but how he's surviving is he's subsidizing right now from his savings, but he's almost out of savings. He only has a little bit left, so he's got this debate going on about, does he get a reverse mortgage? Does he sell his house and go rent somewhere? He's weighing all of these different options because he's literally at poverty level, except for the fact he happens to have a paid off house, and so he's scared. And it's just not just people living downtown. It's a lot of seniors are suffering from this.
Well, it is, and these are folks that have, you and I would say they've done everything right. They saved, they invested in a house, or they've done all of the things that you would hope. And then sometimes life just intervenes, and sometimes people, so the good news is we're all living longer, and sometimes people just outlive their money, and we see that quite often, where people, they had a life savings, and then sometimes you also see, very common for us, as a spouse gets sick, they're not old enough yet for Medicare, not poor enough for Medi-Cal, and so the life savings goes taking care of the spouse, who quite often ends up passing away, and the survivor is left with none of the life savings that he or she thought they were going to have, and they're living strictly off of their Social Security and maybe SSI, and that sometimes is well below the poverty level, and they just can't make it. And So that's where we come in and try to provide that safety net to make sure they remain healthy and independent.
Well, that's exactly what I think is so sad, because we're talking about people who at one time were saving for retirement. They were, when they were, our age, they were saving, they were trying to prepare. They did everything they could so that they could live a decent quality of life when they finally were able to retire. And then for whatever reason, like you said, maybe it's a life event, maybe who knows what it could be, poor planning, whatever it is, all of a sudden they're struggling, and it's scary to be in that situation.
Oh, it is. I mean, we deal with homeless. I mean, we deal with homeless seniors who fall all the way through the safety net and are on the street. I mean, I have a gentleman, a guy named John, who was homeless for 10 years. He was an auto worker in Detroit, got laid off, decided to move to San Diego because hoping he could find a job, and his fortunes just didn't go well, and he ended up being on the street. And he would come every day to our center, didn't tell us that he was homeless, and he would volunteer, and he would sweep the floor, clean the bathrooms, do whatever in order to be able to make sure that he could get a meal from us. But I mean, there's a tremendous work ethic, but sometimes life just intervenes, and people need help.
Well, after the break, we're going to continue our discussion with Paul Downey, the president and CEO of Serving Seniors, of servingseniors.org. You're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer.